cherry blossom is the flower of any of several trees of genus Prunus, particularly the Japanese cherry, Prunus serrulata, which is sometimes called sakura after the Japanese. Cherry blossom is speculated to be native to the Himalayas. Currently it is widely distributed, especially in the temperate zone of the Northern Hemisphere such as Europe, West Siberia, China, Japan, United States, etc. Many of the varieties that have been cultivated for ornamental use do not produce fruit. Edible cherries generally come from cultivars of the related species Prunus avium and Prunus cerasus. Flower viewing. Hanami is the centuries-old practice of picnicking under a blooming sakura or yume tree. The custom is said to have started during the Nara period when it was yume blossoms that people admired in the beginning. But by the Heian period, cherry blossoms came to attract more attention and hanami was synonymous with sakura. From then on, in both waka and haiku, flowers meant cherry blossoms. The custom was originally limited to the elite of the imperial court, but soon spread to samurai society and, by the Edo period, to the common people as well. Tokugawa Yoshimune planted areas of cherry blossom trees to encourage this. Under the sakura trees, people had lunch and drank sake and cheerful feasts. Every year the Japanese Meteorological Agency and the public track the sakura zensen as it moves northward up the archipelago with the approach of warmer weather via nightly forecasts following the weather segment of news programs. The blossoming begins in Okinawa in January and typically reaches Kyoto and Tokyo at the end of March or the beginning of April. It proceeds into areas at the higher altitudes and northward, arriving in Hokkaido a few weeks later. Japanese pay close attention to these forecasts and turn out in large numbers at parks, shrines, and temples with family and friends to hold flower viewing parties. Hanami festivals celebrate the beauty of the cherry blossom and for many are a chance to relax and enjoy the beautiful view. The custom of hanami dates back many centuries in Japan. The 8th century chronicle Nihon Shoki records hanami festivals being held as early as the 3rd century CE. Most Japanese schools and public buildings have cherry blossom trees outside of them. Since the fiscal and school year both begin in April, in many parts of Honshu, the first day of work or school coincides with the cherry blossom season. The Japan Cherry Blossom Association developed a list of Japan's top 100 cherry blossom spots with at least one location in every prefecture. Symbolism. In Japan, cherry blossoms also symbolize clouds due to their nature of blooming en masse, besides being an enduring metaphor for the ephemeral nature of life, an aspect of Japanese cultural tradition that is often associated with Buddhistic influence, and which is embodied in the concept of mono-no-ware. The association of the cherry blossom with mono-no-ware dates back to 18th century scholar Motari Norinaga. The transience of their blossoms, the extreme beauty and quick death, has often been associated with mortality. For this reason, cherry blossoms are richly symbolic, and have been utilized often in Japanese art, manga, anime, and film, as well as at musical performances for ambient effect. There is at least one popular folk song, originally meant for the shakuhachi, titled Sakura, and several pop songs. The flower is also represented on all manner of consumer goods in Japan, including kimono, stationery, and dishware. The Sakurakai or Cherry Blossom Society was the name chosen by young officers within the Imperial Japanese Army in September 1930 for their secret society established with the goal of reorganizing the state along totalitarian militaristic lines, via a military coup d'état if necessary. During World War II, the cherry blossom was used to motivate the Japanese people, to stoke nationalism and militarism among the populace. Even prior to the war, they were used in propaganda to inspire Japanese spirit, as in the Song of Young Japan, exulting in warriors, who were ready like the myriad cherry blossoms to scatter. In 1932, Akiko Yoseno's poetry urged Japanese soldiers to endure sufferings in China and compared the dead soldiers to cherry blossoms. Arguments that the plans for the Battle of Leyte Gulf, involving all Japanese ships, would expose Japan to serious danger if they failed, were countered with the plea that the Navy be permitted to bloom as flowers of death. The last message of the forces on Peleliu was Sakura, Sakura cherry blossoms. Japanese pilots would paint them on the sides of their planes before embarking on a suicide mission, or even take branches of the trees with them on their missions. A cherry blossom painted on the side of a bomber symbolized the intensity and ephemerality of life. In this way, the aesthetic association was altered such that falling cherry petals came to represent the sacrifice of youth in suicide missions to honor the emperor. The first kamikaze unit had a subunit called Sakura or wild cherry blossom. The government even encouraged the people to believe that the souls of downed warriors were reincarnated in the blossoms. In its colonial enterprises, Imperial Japan often planted cherry trees as a means of claiming occupied territory as Japanese space. Cherry blossoms are a prevalent symbol in izumi, the traditional art of Japanese tattoos. In tattoo art, cherry blossoms are often combined with other classic Japanese symbols like koi fish, dragons or tigers. Varieties and blooming: the following species, hybrids, and varieties are used for sakura: Prunus orbitala var pilosa, Prunus campanulata, Prunus fusiana, Prunus incisa var incisa, Prunus incisa var quinquensis, Prunus introrsa, Prunus kanzakura, Prunus miyoshi, Prunus parvifolia, Prunus pendula, Prunus sakura, Prunus sargentia, Prunus serrulata, Prunus sieboldii, Prunus subhertera, Prunus siodoi, Prunus tajimensis, Prunus terkinakao, Prunus veracunda, Prunus iedoensis. Japan has a wide variety of cherry blossoms. Well over 200 cultivars can be found there. The most popular variety of cherry blossom in Japan is the Somu Yoshino. Its flowers are nearly pure white, tinged with a palest pink, especially near the stem. They bloom and usually fall within a week, before the leaves come out. Therefore, the trees look nearly white from top to bottom. The variety takes its name from the village of Somu. It was developed in the mid to late 19th century at the end of the Edo period and the beginning of the Meiji period. The Somu Yoshino is so widely associated with cherry blossoms that Jidaigeki and other works of fiction often depict the variety in the Edo period or earlier. Such depictions are anachronisms. Winter sakura or fusakura begins to bloom in the fall and continues blooming sporadically throughout the winter. It is said to be a cross between the Dohagan sakura, the Tokyo Higan cherry and Mame sakura. Other categories include Imazakura, Yazakura, and Shidezakura. The Yazakura have large flowers, thick with rich pink petals. The Shidezakura, or weeping cherry, has branches that fall like those of a weeping willow, bearing cascades of pink flowers. By country, Australia. During World War II, a prisoner of war camp near the town of Cowra in New South Wales, Australia was the site of one of the largest prison escapes of the war, on August 5, 1944. During the Cowra breakout and subsequent rounding up of POWs, 4 Australian soldiers and 231 Japanese soldiers died and 108 prisoners were wounded. The Japanese war cemetery holding the dead from the breakout was tended to after WWII by members of the Cowra RSL and ceded to Japan in 1963. In 1971 the Cowra Tourism Development decided to celebrate this link to Japan, and proposed a Japanese garden for the town. The Japanese government agreed to support this development as a sign of thanks for the respectful treatment of their war dead. The development also received funding from the Australian government and private entities. The garden was designed by Ken Nakajima, a world-renowned designer of Japanese gardens at the time. The first stage was opened in 1979, with a second stage opened in 1986. The gardens were designed in the style of the Edo period and are a keiishiki or strolling garden. They are designed to show all of the landscape types of Japan. At 5 hectares, the Cowra Japanese Garden is the largest Japanese garden in the Southern Hemisphere. An annual cherry blossom festival is a major event in Cowra's tourism calendar and is held in the gardens during September. Brazil. With the Japanese diaspora to Brazil, many immigrants brought seedlings of cherry trees. In São Paulo State, home to the largest Japanese community outside Japan, it is common to find them in Japan-related facilities and in some homes, usually of the cultivars Prunus serrulata ukiwari and Prunus serrulata varlanesiana Himalaya. In the Parana state, many cities received many of these immigrants, who planted the trees, as in Apucarana, Moringa, Cascavel and especially in the capital city of Curitiba. In the capital city of Parana, the first seedlings were brought by Japanese immigrants in the first half of the 20th century, but large quantities of them were only planted from the 1990s, with the opening of the Botanical Garden of Curitiba. Nowadays the seedlings are produced locally and used in afforestation of streets and squares as in the Japanese square, where there are more than 30 cherry trees around the square which were sent by the Japanese Empire to Curitiba. Canada. Vancouver, British Columbia is famous for its thousands of cherry trees lining many streets and in many parks, including Queen Elizabeth Park and Stanley Park. Vancouver holds the Vancouver Cherry Blossom Festival every year. With multiple varieties and a temperate climate, they begin to bloom in February yearly and peak in April. High Park in Toronto, Ontario features many Somu Yoshino cherry trees that were given to Toronto by Japan in 1959. Through the Sakura project, the Japanese consulate donated a further 34 cherry trees to High Park in 2001, plus cherry trees to various other locations like Exhibition Place, McMaster University, York University and the University of Toronto's Main and Scarborough campuses. Niagara Falls also has many near the falls itself. Royal Botanical Gardens in Burlington and Hamilton was also the recipient of a number of Somu Yoshino cherry trees that were donated by the Consulate General of Japan in Toronto as part of the Sakura project. The trees are located in the Arboretum and the Rock Garden and were planted to celebrate the continual strengthening of friendship between Japan and Canada. Peak bloom time at Royal Botanical Gardens is normally around the last week of April or the first week of May. China. Cherry trees naturally grow in the middle northern or southern part of China, the area nearby the sea. However, the most famous cherry blossom parks in China reflect Japan's brief occupation of parts of China during the first half of the 20th century or the donation from Japan thereafter. Longwentang Cherry Blossom Park in Lushan, Dalian, Liaoning, East Lake Cherry Blossom Park near Wuhan University, Indong District, Wuhan, Hubei, Wuhan University. Indong District, Wuhan, Hubei, Nanshan Botanical Garden in Nanjing District, Chongqing, Germany. The cherry blossom is a major tourist attraction in Germany's Altsland orchard region. The largest hanami in Germany, in Hamburg, with Japanese-style fireworks, organized by the German-Japanese Society, draws tens of thousands spectators every spring. India. In India, cherry blossom is attraction as well, most notably in eastern and northeastern India and in various British-era botanical gardens especially in cooler climatic zones such as in the Himalayas, Nilgiri Hills, Garo Hills, Khasi Hills as well as in some hill stations in the western Ghats and in the northern districts of West Bengal of Jalpaiguri and Darjeeling. Prunus serrulata is wild Himalayan cherry and sour cherry, known in Hindi as Padma or Padmakashtha, is a deciduous cherry tree found in East Asia. It is of the family Rosaceae and the genus Prunus. The Netherlands. In the year 2000, the Japan Women's Club donated 400 cherry blossom trees to the city of Amstelveen. The trees have been planted in the Cherry Blossom Park in the Amsterdamsbos. A special detail is that every tree has a name. 200 trees have female Japanese names, 200 trees have female Dutch names. South Korea. Watching of cherry blossom was introduced to Korea during Japanese rule. The festivals continued even after the Japanese surrendered in WWII, but have been contentious, and many cherry trees have been destroyed because they were seen as symbols of the occupation. However, there has been considerable confusion about the origin of the cultivated Japanese cherry trees and the differences between them and native Korean trees. Certain trees at Seoul's Gyeongbok Palace were cut down to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Japanese surrender in World War II. Although cherry blossoms are already indigenous to Korea, Japan had planted trees on sacred and provocative locations in the palace. Once the offending trees were cut down, the festival continued with the indigenous trees. The Cherry Blossom Festival at Gyeongbok Palace is one of a number of such festivals across Korea and is prominently advertised to tourists. Turkey. In 2005, Japanese cherry trees were presented by Japan to the Gökçeadit Botanical Garden in Istanbul, Turkey. Each tree represents one sailor of the frigate Ertugrul, which was a famous frigate of the Ottoman Turkish Navy. On the way back from a goodwill visit to Japan in 1890, she ran into a typhoon and sank with loss of 587 Ottoman Turkish sailors. That loss is being remembered at every anniversary. The Japanese cherry trees represent memory of those who died and provide remembrance. United Kingdom, Batsford Arboretum in Gloucestershire holds the national collection of Japanese village cherries, Sato Sakura Group. Keele University in Staffordshire has one of the UK's largest collections of flowering cherries, with more than 150 varieties. United States. Branch Brook Park, which is shared by the city of Newark and the township of Belleville, New Jersey, is the oldest county park in the United States and is home to the nation's largest collection of cherry blossom trees, with about 4,300. Japan gave 3,020 cherry blossom trees as a gift to the United States in 1912 to celebrate the nation's then-growing friendship, replacing an earlier gift of 2,000 trees which had to be destroyed due to disease in 1910. These trees were planted in Sakura Park in Manhattan and lie in the shore of the tidal basin in Washington, D.C. The first two original trees were planted by First Lady Helen Taft and Viscountess Chinder on the bank of the tidal basin. The gift was renewed with another 3,800 trees in 1965. In Washington, D.C., the cherry blossom trees continue to be a popular tourist attraction when they reach full bloom in early spring. Also, Balboa Park of San Diego has 2,000 cherry blossom trees that blossom in mid to late March. In Los Angeles, over 2,000 trees are located at Lake Balboa in Van Nuys. These trees were donated by an anonymous Japanese benefactor and were planted in 1992. They originated from a single parent tree and were developed to grow in warm climates. Philadelphia is also home to over 2,000 flowering Japanese cherry trees, half of which were a gift from the Japanese government in 1926 in honor of the 150th anniversary of American independence, with the other half planted by the Japan-America Society of Greater Philadelphia between 1998 and 2007. Philadelphia's cherry blossoms are located within Fairmount Park, and the annual Subaru Cherry Blossom Festival of Greater Philadelphia celebrates the blooming trees. The University of Washington in Seattle also has cherry blossoms in its quad. Other U.S. cities have an annual cherry blossom festival, including the International Cherry Blossom Festival in Macon, Georgia, which features over 300,000 cherry trees. The Brooklyn Botanic Garden in New York City also has a large, well-attended festival. Portsmouth, New Hampshire, is the site of the peace conference that produced the Treaty of Portsmouth, for which the original Washington, D.C. cherry trees were given in thanks. Several cherry trees planted on the bank of the tidal pond next to Portsmouth City Hall were the gift of Portsmouth's Japanese sister city of Nichinani, the hometown of Marquis Kumura Jutera, Japan's representative at the conference. Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, has 200 Somu Yoshino trees, a gift from its sister institution, Japan's Shubu University. Culinary use. Cherry blossoms and leaves are edible and both are used as food ingredients in Japan. The blossoms are pickled in salt and umizu, and used for coaxing out flavor in igashi, or rampan. Salt pickled blossoms in hot water are called sakura, and drunk at festive events like weddings in place of green tea. The leaves, mostly from the Oeshima cherry because of the softness, are also pickled in salted water and used for sakumokai. Since the leaves contain coumarin, which is toxic in large doses, it is not recommended to eat them in great quantities. See also, Cherry, International Cherry Blossom Festival in Macon, Georgia, Kabazaku, Sakura wood craftsmanship, Kyogo, discussion of the role of sakura in Japanese poetry, list of AGM flowering cherries, Mono no Ware, Oka, Special Attack Aircraft of World War II, Prunus, Subaru Cherry Blossom Festival of Greater Philadelphia, The Cherry Orchard, references. External links, International Cherry Blossom Festival online, information about the 300,000 Yoshino cherry trees in Macon, Georgia and the 10-day celebration held in mid-March. Vancouver Cherry Blossom Festival, information about the 37,000 cherry trees in Greater Vancouver, what's in bloom now, Cherry Scout reports and maps, cultivar identification. Subaru Cherry Blossom Festival of Greater Philadelphia, information about cherry trees in the annual 2-week Subaru Cherry Blossom Festival of Greater Philadelphia. Japanese Cherry Blossom Events, Copenhagen Sakura Festival, Flowering Cherry Database, Forestry and Forest Products Research Institute, Flowering Cherry Introduction, Forestry and Forest Products Research Institute.